Welcome to the political panel. This week we're talking about the energy market in the province, and we're doing that because of two interesting and significant developments. The first one, the Energy and Utilities Board hired a consultant to look at the markup involved in the sale of propane in the province. Now, New Brunswick's markup is much higher than the markup is on propane in PEI in Newfoundland. The two largest propane retailers in the province, Irving and Superior, refused to cooperate with the consultant's investigation. And consequently, the EUB wasn't able to assess whether the margins are fair to consumers of propane. Now, the other issue you have probably heard about was three of the province's largest users of natural gas asking the province to roll back what they say are excessive prices in New Brunswick for natural gas. Joining me now to discuss those two issues, New Brunswick's Energy Minister, Craig Leonard, and here for the Liberals, that party's energy critic, Brian Kenny. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Hi.
Mr. Leonard, I want to start with you in that first example that I gave off the top about the two largest propane companies refusing to cooperate with the consultant's investigation. How acceptable is it, from your point of view, for those two companies to tell the regulatory agency, we're not going to respond to your investigation, and basically ignore the EUB's attempt to find out whether there's fairness in propane pricing?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly concerning. There's no question about it. The EUB's role in any commodity that it regulates is to make sure that there's fair and reasonable pricing for the people of New Brunswick. Clearly, you know, if it's a situation where distributors or suppliers of a particular product are not going to cooperate with the EUB to determine, so they can determine whether or not the consumers are receiving fair and reasonable pricing, you know, we're going to have to take a look at the scenario on that to see, you know, how does the legislation read, what is the EUB's recourse in that matter, and to determine, you know, if there's going to have to be some changes there to make sure that you don't get into a situation where you've got a regulated product that really can't be regulated because the information just isn't there to do the proper job.
On the surface, does that seem like an acceptable response to the EUB's investigation to say, no, we're not going to cooperate?
I think, you know, again, you know, companies are always going to be very protective of their information and their business. So, you know, we'd have to take a look at what the rationale that they're giving. Propane in New Brunswick is a very, very thinly traded commodity. It's not used all that much in the province, certainly compared to the other Atlantic provinces. So as a result of that, you know, there's only a few players in the market, a few suppliers, and certainly I'm sure that they don't want their business information going to their competitors. But again, we've got to try to find some kind of a balance there to make sure that the consumers are protected in that case as well.
Mr. Kenny, how acceptable do you think it is for those two companies to say, no, don't even bother asking?
Well, I think, like Craig was saying, we need to find a balance there. And with the Energy Utility Board, I think possibly in this scenario we may have to put a bit more teeth into the ability for the EUB to move forward and find out information. I don't know the full particulars on this report and what was taking place with those two companies, but I think the ultimate goal of the legislation is to protect the consumers in New Brunswick and make sure we have a fair price for consumers here compared to other jurisdictions.
When you say more teeth, are you suggesting that give the EUB and its officials the regulatory authority to demand, to force the companies to put the information on the table so the EUB could make a qualified evaluation? I think
there has to be some reviews on there to take a look at, in this scenario here, a specific scenario with propane. And other scenarios, too, is that they have the ability to be able to give the proper information to the public and also to make sure that we can have fair pricing here in New Brunswick to have that competitive level playing field with other jurisdictions.
Mr. Leonard, in that scenario, you know, are you thinking of giving the EUB and its officials the regulatory authority? Would that be an appropriate response to the situation, giving the officials, excuse me, the regulatory authority to force the company to reveal the information that the EUB requires?
Well, again, I think you have to look at the particulars of the situation, and certainly you wouldn't be asking a regulatory body to get companies to divulge information that might put them at a competitive disadvantage. But at the same time, with a product like propane, because it's thinly traded, the normal market realities don't necessarily apply to it. So I know, for example, with propane in New Brunswick, a big reason why the margin has to be quite high is due to the fact that most of it comes from Sarnia, and there's different aspects of that the EUB would also have to take into consideration. Whether or not we would actually go to the point to force a company to give that information, you'd have to look at it from a cost-benefit perspective. Is the company going to be put in a position where it harms their business, and what's the benefit on it if it's a very thinly traded commodity that you might be able to have a business pull this information over, but the benefit that comes to consumers is really negligible in the grand scheme of things. So I think a short way to say that is that you have to look at the particulars of each specific situation, and we'll wait till the EUB reports back on this particular one.
I wonder from the public's point of view whether the fact that the EUB was rebuffed in its attempts to get the information it says it needed, whether that affects the public's perception of the effectiveness of the regulatory agency, whether the regulatory agency is in fact capable of doing the job it's required to do by legislation if it can't get the information it needs.
And I think that's a very valid point. I mean, certainly the EUB's role is to interpret the legislation that's in place, and if we run into a roadblock where the EUB feels that it can't do its job properly, then clearly we do have to look at the legislation to make sure that it's in a form that the EUB feels comfortable with to do their job to a reasonable manner.
Okay, Mr. Kenny, let's start with you on the second issue that we're dealing with here today, and that is the three big industrial users of natural gas, or three of the big industrial users of natural gas in the province, Flakeboard, Wallboard, and Ganongs, saying that they think they're paying an excessive price for natural gas in this province. They want the government to roll the price of natural gas back, I think through some regulatory action or some intervention. How do you feel about government intervening in the price of natural gas?
Well, there's a system in place right now that truly is really not working for the benefit of all consumers in the province. We know that these companies have come out saying that there's, the market prices that they're paying now that leaves them at a competitive disadvantage with other jurisdictions in North America, and we know that. The EUB is in there. We're going to see what the results will be for the hearings in the EUB moving forward. But we know that they are at a competitive disadvantage. What we think we have to do is take a look at the system and how it's set up right here in New Brunswick. And that's where, we're willing to work with the government, work with the stakeholders to get together to see if we can find a solution to be able to give a competitive, at least level playing field with those companies. Because the bottom line is these are large companies that employ a lot of people. In St. Stephen, there's probably 240 employees there alone. They're a large consumer of gas. And what's taking place right now is that they're in the concern right now in the mode of looking at shutting this place down. So we're here as the energy critic to take a look and say, okay, what can we do in the meantime to be able to save those jobs? I know that it's very important to be able to have those competitive advantages in New Brunswick to be able to attract outside industry, whether it's the manufacturing sector. But the bottom line is, too, we've got to have the balance there for our residential payers and the other people that are on the system. So it's going to have to take a look at an overhaul, and that's where I think the government has to work. And we were planning on moving forward that before the election. It's been on the table, so I think we've got to really take a collective effort and find a solution for this.
Okay, in terms of an overhaul,
yeah.
Mr. Leonard, where do you think we have to go?
Well, I think we need to take a look at where we are now, and the reality is that the system is working the way it's supposed to for residential and small commercial, and the way it's supposed to work is that People using natural gas are saving money compared to what they would have been paying if they were still using electricity or oil. As Brian indicated, the issue is when we get to the larger industrials, they are entities that have to produce their products in New Brunswick but sell them outside of New Brunswick, and as a result, they're competing against other firms from other jurisdictions. And in some of those other jurisdictions, they have mature natural gas markets that enable the distributors to use cost of service pricing, which obviously is going to be much lower than what we're dealing with here in New Brunswick. So as a result of that, you've got two different ends of the spectrum here that we got to balance. Is you've got Enbridge, they've invested in the system, they've put up the capital costs, they've built it from scratch. They've followed the law the way that it's supposed to in terms of their pricing. Everything that they've been doing is well within their right under the current legislation. You've got a situation where consumers and small commercial are benefiting from the fact that they're using natural gas. And in reality, the large industrials are benefiting as well in terms of the options that they have in New Brunswick. They're still paying less than they would if they were still using oil. But the problem is the competitive situation. The fact that when you look outside of New Brunswick and you look at the prices that their competitors are paying, that's a huge issue that we do have to deal with, and that's why we've got the system under review. We're looking to find that balance to make sure that the system is competitive in today's marketplace, but is also sustainable in the long term.
We had Dave Charlson on the show yesterday morning, and I asked him what would happen if those three companies went through and fulfilled their threat to find natural gas elsewhere if Enbridge wouldn't reduce its cost to them. And he said, well, if they left, we would have to go to the other customers in the market to get more money. Would your government be okay with letting Enbridge go after its other customers to replace the revenue that was lost if those three big companies go?
Well, I think that's the problem that we're facing here right now, is that the way that the system is set up currently, as I had alluded to before in a previous discussion with you, that the market-based pricing that Enbridge uses is tied to either electricity or oil rates. And as long as natural gas tracked oil, that would have been fine.
Right.
We would have had those savings, and there wouldn't have been much of a difference in cost competitiveness across different jurisdictions. But now we've got a situation where natural gas is low, oil is extremely high. So as a result of that, our system is set up where we track oil. We don't track natural gas. And you look out over the next 10 years, and it's very widely predicted that oil will continue to rise while natural gas will remain low. And as a result of that, we just see this issue perpetuating itself unless we step in and actually say, we've got to review this situation and bring all the stakeholders together to say, we've got to fix this for the people in New Brunswick. It has to work for Enbridge, it has to work for large industrials, but it also has to work for those 11,000 other customers that are in the province as well.
Okay, Mr. Kenny, what would you do? I mean, let's say you're sitting in Mr. Leonard's office in his chair. Where do you look for a solution? You've got all the players around the table. Where's the wiggle room there?
There has to be a compromise from both ends of the spectrum, working with Enbridge and making sure, as Mr. Leonard said, to find a solution for this. I believe that, if they're talking about going back to other alternatives, whether it's oil or whatever the case may be, they can switch back, but that's moving backwards. We've got natural gas. It's a clean energy. We've got to find ways to be able to promote the more use of natural gas in the province, but we can't do that until we fix the system to be able to have those competitive prices and market prices here in New Brunswick. And I think that, again, working with all the stakeholders right now and getting together and saying, we've got to find a solution. How can we do it? Do they restructure? And, Enbridge is a good company. They've invested a lot of money in the infrastructure and so on, but I think the time has come now where there's substantial differences between the pricing of oil and natural gas, and they haven't had the ability to have enough customers to really reflect their proper distribution. So the bottom line, what our stance is on this, we want to be able to protect those jobs and have good rates for New Brunswickers to be able to afford using natural gas.
Mr. Leonard, in terms of options at your disposal, one of the things that Mr. Charlson put on the table in my interview with him yesterday morning was that there are 6 customers, significant customers in the province, who are not getting their gasoline through the Enbridge system. And what I inferred from what he was saying was that if those 6 customers in northern New Brunswick were getting their gas through the Enbridge system, then the infrastructure revenue would be shared by more companies, and so the impact on these 3 particular companies that are complaining would be less.
Right.
Can you do anything in a regulatory way that would solve that particular issue?
Yeah, again, everything has to be on the table here. So when we come and bring in all these players, the single end franchise users have to be there. Enbridge certainly has to be there. The government has to be there. There's no question about it. So, right now it's a situation where those single end franchise users, the gas that they're utilizing, which is a huge, huge percentage of the total gas that's being used in New Brunswick.
And who are they? Do you mind? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, most of them, it's the large industrial companies that we've got in the province. So, I mean, it's some of the Irving companies. It's Bayside Power. It's TransCanada as well. And so, when we're talking about how to correct the system here, we have to look at the overall structure, and we have to take a holistic approach. We can't just be taking a few select companies that are having trouble being competitive with the current structure and trying to fix it for them, because in a situation like Enbridge is in right now, where clearly the revenues aren't covering the expenses, it's not a situation where they can simply just say, okay, we'll take less profit. If somebody's paying less, somebody's got to pay more, and we're still not even at a break-even point for them at that point. So you've got to bring everybody in and say, okay, Enbridge, what can you put on the table? Single-end franchise users, what can you put on the table? Industrial, what can you do? And then government's got a role in there as well, is to take a look at the whole thing to say, okay, what can we do here that will create an effective solution for everybody?
Well, that's the reasoned approach. At some point, do you anticipate having to use some kind of regulatory muscle to impose a solution? I mean, do you see that being an option at some point?
Yeah, well, that's the end result anyways, because all of this falls out of the legislation that is set up for the Enbridge franchise. So, like the market-based pricing and all that scenario, that would all have to be reevaluated, and the new system that would be put together would have to come down and be put into new legislation. And I guess one of the things, this has all started from the EUB, this whole discussion, but we haven't mentioned them at all. And I think the key thing as well is that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're interpreting the legislation as it stands. They're working on behalf of New Brunswickers throughout these hearings. But again, you've got a situation where if the legislation itself isn't up to what it should be for working in the best interests of New Brunswickers, then that's where we got to focus.
Go ahead.
And that's where I think there has to be some revisions on the legislation. Look at today's model that's out there. Also, looking at where do we put New Brunswick in the marketplace. How do we attract business to New Brunswick when other jurisdictions know that we have some of the higher prices for fuel? And that's why we're very concerned about the gas tax that was put in place. That's going to have a creative disadvantage to us for all our goods and services and for getting back and forth to work. At the same time, on natural gas, we've got to find a solution for this to be able to say how are we going to get manufacturing into New Brunswick that creates jobs. I think it's so important that we work all together to find a solution and work together soon.
So in terms of getting everybody together at the table to have this summit on natural gas pricing, when does that happen? Who takes the initiative?
Well, we've been in discussions with all parties so far. I mean, we've met with the industrial companies that are having issues. We've been meeting with Enbridge on a regular basis as well. The review that's been taking place in the Department of Energy has been in the background. We're at a point now where we want to sit down and start talking about different options with these parties. In fact, Enbridge, I believe we've got a meeting set up for next week to sit down and start looking at all these things. It's going to be a long process. I don't want to put anything out there that people will expect like within a couple weeks or anything like that. We'll be able to make some changes that are so massive as basically reevaluating and then re-implementing an entire natural gas distribution system. There's a lot of complexity to it. And we also want to make sure that we get it right. There was clearly some premises that the previous structure was based on that didn't hold to be true over the long term. So we want to make sure that we get it right, that we're not faced with this scenario just a few years down the road. And right now, Enbridge it's a 20-year period that they've got. We're in about the midpoint of it, about 10 or 11 years. So there's different options. It's going to take cooperation on everybody's part. So.
How much of this discussion and deliberation will be in the public forum?
Well, I think we'll be able to update people on where things are going. Certainly, I mean, again, when you're dealing with contractual obligations and things like that, it'll be difficult to let everybody know exactly what every sentence that's been said in these reviews. You're talking about Enbridge, and they're going to have their information that they feel is going to need to be protected throughout this process. But at the same time, our commitment is to be as open and transparent as possible with the people of New Brunswick, and as a result of that, we'll certainly be willing to talk and update people on how things are progressing.
You think there might be a concern on the part of New Brunswickers that this is being done behind closed doors with the big players, and who's looking after the interest of ordinary people?
Well, it's hard to say what the perception is out there for people. All I know is that people say, energy costs are very expensive, and we've been on a dialogue with energy, whether it's NB Power, whether it's, additional gas taxes. I know that Mr. Volpe, his report is going to be coming out soon. I'm sure you probably have a copy of it. I'd like to see what the findings are in that energy. I'd like to see what the bottom line is on what they heard from people across the province and what's going to be in that report. Whether or not natural gas is in that report, I'm sure it is, but we've got to look at the overall strategy with efficiency, beefing up efficiency in New Brunswick, finding ways to get people to have incentives to put in centralized systems in their homes to be able to save energy, continue on the good work that Efficiency New Brunswick's been doing, finding ways to conserve energy on every means, and at the same time finding a competitive advantage that New Brunswick can have to be able to attract business here to New Brunswick for manufacturing and the bottom line to create jobs.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time.
No
Good
problem.
discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.